25.20 is the patch that this year's Worlds is going to be played on, so there are a lot of pro play-centric changes being issued. 14 different champions are being adjusted for this patch, so we'll have the complete breakdown and analysis of every single one and provide you guys with an update to the tier list for every single role. But first, some hard truths. YouTube is built for the algorithm, not your LP. That means clickbait titles, junk food topics, and stretching simple tips for watch time. We're part of that system too, just like every guide and YouTube channel. And because every video is randomly surfaced to you as a singular guide and topic, advice often contradicts what you just watched. No context, no plan, more confusion. On our website at SkillCapped, however, we're free from all that, allowing us to focus on what actually matters. We teach in the most efficient way to really rank you up fast, with the same premium editing and challenger level coaches you see here, just without the algorithm's hoops. Start with our essentials courses for every role, updated for season 15. These are meticulously planned step-by-step guides that build your fundamentals in the right order. Once you finish essentials, move into the advanced courses, deep dive wave control, advanced mechanics, the proven bronze to diamond climb paths, and literal world record jungle clears for each jungler, all structured so lessons stack instead of contradict. While you follow these learning paths, we also release our popular challenger walkthroughs, new sessions every week showing how to abuse the best meta champs for your elo, supported with an AMA section below each video, which we always respond to. We back it with a climb 5 divisions improvement guarantee while you're actively using SkillCapped, plus a 30-day refund change of mind policy on top of that, so there's literally no risk. Stop trying to mix and match random guides and start following a structured path, far away from all the noise. Click the limited time discount link below to join SkillCapped today. There are no item or rune changes being issued in 25.20, so let's jump right into the top lane changes. Malphite is going to receive a couple of buffs with his base armor going up from 37 to 40, and E-base damage is being increased from 70 scaling to 230 to 80 scaling to 240. So a base armor buff like this is actually a lot more impactful for a champion like Malphite because his abilities deal damage based on his armor. E has 40% armor scaling, and then W has 15%, so you're not only getting tankier, but you're dealing more damage as well. So with these buffs, we think Malphite is going to be one of the best solo queue top laners that you can play, and we'll be giving him a push into the OP tier. Camille is going to have a bit of power shifted around in her kit, with armor growth going down from 5 to 4.5, so you're losing a total of 8 armor at level 18. W is receiving 2 buffs though, with the cooldown dropping by 2 seconds at rank 1, and the damage is being increased by 10 at all ranks. So you'll have more offensive power in lane in exchange for less defensive strength later on, which should be a good trade-off. Whether these adjustments actually add significant strength to Camille is tough to say, as we don't expect them to significantly sway her power level, so we'll be keeping her in the top lane A tier for now. So looking at the top lane tier list, the 2 major moves of the patch consist of Malphite joining the OP tier, while Warwick slots into S. Warwick is being directly nerfed this patch, and we'll cover the changes when looking at jungle, but we do expect him to become weaker in the top lane as well. With these melee fighters like Jax, Garen, Darius, and Aatrox being the most played top laners for solo queue right now, the Quinn pick has so much value. Quinn lanes very well into all 4 of them, and Malphite is the only champion meta she has a more difficult time against, so as long as you ban out Malphite, then you're golden. So overall, it's a pretty light patch for top lane, and we can expect the meta to remain very similar to where it was in 25.19. The one jungler getting buffed for this patch is Pantheon, as Riot will be partially reverting the nerfs they gave him last patch. Q monster damage is going up from 75 to 80%, while W minion and monster damage is being increased from 120 to 150. Pantheon literally dropped down to a 45% win rate due to the 25.19 nerfs, so with Riot only partially reverting them, we don't see him becoming that much better. If anything, he will slot back in around a 47% level, but that still leaves him on the weaker side of things, so for now, we'll be keeping Pantheon in the jungle C tier. Briar has been a very powerful jungler for a while now, so Riot will be reducing the max stacks of her passive from 7 to 5. So to get an idea of what this means damage-wise, on Blade of the Ruined King Spike and with a Q into 7 auto attacks, you were dealing 1,279 damage in 25.19, and in 25.20, you're going to be dealing 1,252 damage. So a 27 damage loss over the course of an extended fight, which shouldn't end up hurting Briar very significantly. There's a chance she drops down to an A tier level, but we realistically think she'll remain an S, so we'll be leaving her there for now. We have a few nerfs lined up for Volibear as his AP ratios are being targeted. Passive AP ratio is going down from 50 to 45%, and this is the empowered basic attack AP ratio that is being nerfed, and not the attack speed AP ratio. So you need to auto attack 5 times for this nerf to come into effect, and once it's active, you're losing about 3 damage per auto attack. E AP ratio is being nerfed as well, with the AP ratio going from 80 to 70%. So in the grand scheme of things, these nerfs shouldn't matter all that much. Volley only builds 1 AP item anyways, being Cosmic Drive, so it's not like he's stacking a bunch of AP in his build to where these AP ratio nerfs would matter more. We are going to be dropping Volibear out of the jungle OP tier, but more so because we think Diana is just a cut above right now, while Volibear will just be a smidge lower in strength, slotted into the S tier. One of the best low elo junglers for a while now, being Warwick, is getting hit with a few scaling nerfs S, as his AD growth is going down from 2.75 to 2.5, while attack speed growth is being reduced from 2.3 to 2%. So at level 18, this means you are losing a total of 4 AD and 5% attack speed. Gold value-wise, this equates to losing a maximum of 265 gold worth of stats, but considering you don't feel the full effect of the changes until level 18 because these are scaling nerfs, it's going to be much less than a 265 gold nerf for most games. So like the Volibear and Briar changes prior, we really don't see Warwick falling in power that significantly, and we'll be keeping him in the jungle S tier. So Riot has these Graves changes listed as adjustments in the patch notes. However, from the testing we've done on the PBE, they are looking like straight up buffs. There's a ton of numbers being swapped around on Graves' Q damage, and it's really confusing to try and digest. So let's just look at the comparison clips to make everything a lot simpler. So let's say you're level 4 on Graves and have completed your full clear and have 2 points in Q. The damage is going to be higher than last patch, coming in at 148 as opposed to 138. What about on your 1-item spike? Well, we see the damage is higher once again in 25.20, with damage at 310 as opposed to 291 from 25.19. Jump ahead to your 2-item spike, and the damage in 25.20 is coming in at 429, while it's down at 418 in 25.19. And for the final test, what about if we have 3 items? In 25.20, the damage from Q is sitting at 589, while in 25.19, it's down at 558. So because Riot listed these Graves changes as adjustments, we were thinking that they would be a nerf early game but a buff later, but they're just buffs throughout the entire game. So Graves is going to be making a push back up the jungle tier list for this patch, as we are bumping him from B into A tier. Riot has a bunch of adjustments lined up for Wukong in 25.20, as his Q bonus AD ratio is going down from 55 to 50%. W cooldown will be increased by 2 seconds in all ranks, and then W damage is going down by 5% at all ranks. E is being changed as well, with the damage going up from 80 scaling to 200 to 80 scaling to 240. So these are all scaling changes to Wukong, as his early game should be very minimally impacted. W cooldown nerf is likely the one that stings the most, as a 2-second increase for mid to late game teamfighting is somewhat impactful. E base damage going up by 40 does mean that by level 13, your overall damage output shouldn't change much at all from last patch, even though Q and W damage are down. E going up should compensate for the loss of damage on Q and W, so it's really only the W cooldown nerf that could potentially sway things towards these adjustments being net negative. Even then, Wukong likely only loses 1% win rate at max, so we'll only be adjusting him down 1 tier, going from S into A. So for the jungle tier list in 25.20, there is one champ who's outclassing everyone else right now, and it's Diana. The buffs from 25.19 has turned out to be incredibly impactful, and she's the picker ban jungler for this patch. Even though there are nerfs to Volibear, Briar, and Warwick for 25.20, they should still remain very strong S tier picks, so we shouldn't see much of a meta shakeup. The meta for jungle is actually pretty diverse right now, as we don't see one specific class dominating. Ka, Echo, and Diana are 3 of the top tier assassins. We've got Volley, Briar, Jax, and Bel'Veth as a few of the most optimal fighters, and then if you want a tankier pick, Amumu is really good after his recent buffs, while Nunu is in a great spot as well. If we move over to the mid lane now, Anivia is going to receive 2 buffs, with her Q cooldown dropping from 12 scaling to 8 seconds to 11 scaling to 7 seconds, and then E base damage is going up by 5 at all ranks. So nothing over the top for Anivia, but considering she's been a great S tier mid laner in recent patches, these buffs push her closer to slotting into OP tier. Realistically, we still think she'll be just shy of OP tier because the likes of Morgana, Diana, and LeBlanc are just insane right now, but Anivia will be without question one of the best mage pickups of the patch. If we see nerfs to LeBlanc and Morgana in 25.21, then Anivia would likely be next in line to slot into OP. Katarina is going to have an easier time laning up against the likes of Zed, Uxin, and Talon moving forward, as her base armor is being increased from 28 to 32. So you're getting 80 gold worth of stats for free from this buff, which isn't anything crazy and shouldn't lead to very much of a win rate boost for Katarina, but she will remain a really good S tier mid lane pick. Riot has a buff lined up for Veigar in 25.20, with his WAP ratio being increased by 10% at all ranks. As we can see in the comparison clips, this will equate to around a 23 damage increase per W when you're on your 2-item spike. Likely not enough to propel Veigar up into an S tier spot, but he will be placed in A as a good mid lane pickup. Orianna is on the nerf list for this patch, as her W base damage is going down from 70 scaling to 270 to 70 scaling to 230, while AP ratio is up from 70 to 80%. So Riot's looking to accomplish 2 things at once with this adjustment. Firstly, by reducing the base damage on W by 40 at max rank, it heavily nerfs the strength of maxing the spell out first. A lot of high elo Orianna players have been maxing W first over Q, and that's just not going to be viable anymore due to this change. Secondly, by increasing the AP ratio, it incentivizes you to opt into more offensive builds instead of going for tankier items like Rod of Ages and Liandry's. On a 2-item spike of Rod of Ages and Archangels, you'll be dealing less damage with a fully maxed out W for this upcoming patch. Once you have 3 items though, that's where the AP ratio buff will outweigh the base damage nerf, as we can see here with Rod, Archangels, and Rabadons. So overall, this will be a net nerf to Orianna because the base damage nerf is going to hurt you in more games than the AP ratio buff will help you. Orianna has already been performing pretty poorly in solo queue prior to these changes, so we expect her to be one of the weaker mages for this patch, as we'll be placing her in the B tier. Azir is going to be issued a few adjustments for this patch, as his WAP ratio will be weaker for his first few levels, but higher once you get it maxed out. As we can see here, when you have your Nashor spike after 4 auto attacks, you're dealing 548 damage in 25.19, but it's up to 575 in 25.20. Damage when hitting an additional target is being altered in a pretty confusing way, so we did a bunch of tests to see exactly how the changes shake out. On one item, your additional target damage is way down compared to last patch. As we can see in 25.19, the second dummy takes 315 damage, but in 25.20, it's only taking 186 damage. On 2 items, the damage is lower as well, as it's up at 629 in 25.19, and then at 467 in 25.20. 3 items is where it turns into a buff, as in 25.19, the total damage is at 976, while in 25.20, it's up at 1074. So overall, this change is likely a net nerf to Azir, because it's going to negatively impact him for a larger portion of the game. W recharge timer is being nerfed, going from 10 scaling to 6 seconds to 12 scaling to 6 seconds. And then one more change is being issued to his E, with the base damage and AP ratio going up. So in terms of single target DPS, your damage will be going up with Azir in 25.20. If you're hitting multiple targets with W in the early to mid game, then it won't be as significant of a buff, but we're leaning more towards these adjustments being net positive. In terms of Azir's tier list placement, we aren't too optimistic just because of how terrible he's been in recent patches. Even if the changes were to boost his win rate by a few percent, he'd still be in a weak state, so we're going to be leaving Azir in the C tier. We have a bunch of adjustments for Fizz lined up, as his W damage is being changed in a few different ways. Let's take a look at some comparison clips to see how the damage has changed. So with your first auto attack, damage is coming in at 219 in 25.19, while it's up at 223 in 25.20, so a slight buff. If we auto attack 3 times with W, the damage in 25.19 is at 609, while in 25.20, it will be up at 630. So it's overall a net buff to Fizz W damage when he's on his Lichbane spike. R damage is being changed so that the minimum damage is up in the early game. Max damage on R is going down though on your level 6 spike. So because of the W damage buffs, we do think these changes should land net positively for Fizz. Even though R damage at max range is down in the early game, first off, you're not always going to be hitting your R from max range, so it's not like you're always affected by the nerf, and secondly, the buff to W should outweigh the nerf to R throughout the course of a game. So Fizz should land in a pretty good spot for 25.20, and we're going to be bumping him into the mid lane S tier. So looking at the mid lane tier list, the upper echelon won't be changing for this patch, as we've got Morgana, Diana, and LeBlanc in the OP tier. Since 25.20 is the patch that Worlds will be played on, Riot will most likely be nerfing LeBlanc and Morgana for 25.21, so definitely take advantage of them while you can. Both champs were overbuffed for solo queue because Riot wants them to be higher priority in pro play at this year's Worlds, so they shouldn't be in the OP tier for too much longer. If you don't want to ban out LeBlanc right now, then pulling out Malzahar or Vex are 2 really good answers to her. Morgana is pretty difficult to counter because she can just brainlessly spam W on the wave and not have to interact at all in lane, but Zed and Ukshin are 2 champs who can play a bit better than most into the pick due to being AD and also having long range mobility, which can punish Morg if she's just spamming out W on the wave. Riot decided to issue a grand total of 0 changes to ADC for 25.20, so the tier list won't be any different from last patch. Jinx and Ashe are your 2 premier champs who are excelling above everyone else right now, so if there are just 2 champs you spam, they are the best in class. As long as you're staying away from Yunara and Kalista, then you can't really go terribly wrong with any other ADC at the moment. You are borderline trolling though by picking Kalista or Yunara, as both champs are sitting at around 46% win rates, so much weaker than all other ADCs. And then for support, it's the same deal as ADC, with Riot completely ignoring the role in 25.20. Milio and Nami have been in the OP tier for quite some time now, so hopefully in these next few patches we see some sort of meta shift for the role. Things have definitely been trending more in favor of enchanters and mages over these past few patches, with Spellbook getting nerfed, a bunch of melee supports being directly nerfed, and then picks like Seraphine, Vel'Koz, Brand, and Morgana seeing direct buffs. The engaged supports like Alistar, Rel, Rakan, and Nautilus are being outperformed by the majority of enchanters, as the only melee support who has actually gained in power over the past while is Leona, as she got some direct buffs back in 25.19. Brand, Vel'Koz, and Zyra are all back in really solid spots for solo queue, as they've received buffs in recent patches, so if you're tired of relying on your ADC to be the DPS source, then now is a great time to pick up a mage. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So that's going to be all for our 25.20 update on the solo queue tier list for every single role. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.